Hello everyone, I'm Tim Diggs with System Improvements, your TapRooT instructor, and today we're going to be talking about the 4 most abused root causes and the reasons why these are the most abused. So the 4 most abused root causes are procedures not used or followed, training, standards, policies, or administrative controls not followed, and no supervision. These are the 4 root causes that people often default to or defer to. Have you ever heard the following phrases in investigations that you were involved in or investigation reports that you were presented? We counseled the operator to be more careful. They should have had a better questioning attitude. They should have known better. This isn't the first time we've had a problem with him. What are these phrases all trying to say? Think about that a second. What's the common theme among all of these phrases, these reasons why this problem happened? The common theme here is that they are blame-oriented. So think about this to help us understand more about blame. There are 3 men working in a quarry, and they're breaking rocks with hand tools. And we go to 3 of these men, one at a time, and ask them what they're doing. And the first man that we come to, we say, "Hey, what are you doing?" And the man says, "Can't you see I'm breaking rocks?" We go to the second man, and the second man says, "Can't you see I'm earning my salary?" And we go to the third man, and the third man says, "Can't you see I'm building a cathedral?" So this story gives us a good understanding of blame, culture, and the behavior we get from it. That first man who said, "Can't you see I'm breaking rocks?" he understood how his task affected his job. The second man understood how his job was important to him. "I'm earning my salary." The third man understood why his job was important to the entire team. So this is a good illustration of how the vision that we have as investigators and leaders creates a culture. And that culture drives a certain behavior from people. So in that first example of creating that blame culture, always looking at problems from that blame-oriented type situation, we get a behavior of, "I didn't do it, nobody saw me do it, you can't prove that I did it." So your vision that you're creating is that if we could just get people to be more careful and try harder, these problems would go away. That's the vision or the approach that you're getting with these cause and effect types of analyses, these blame-oriented types of analyses, where you're doing these 5 whys, these cause maps, and other things like that, where you as the investigator have to know the cause and effect relationship to try to find root causes. And the problem with this is that your root cause analysis is limited by what you already know. So it's easy to fall into that blame-oriented type investigation and start relying on these easy outs, if you will, of root causes and abusing them. In these cause and effect type investigations, investigators who don't know the questions to ask or don't know how to go dig deep enough start pushing off. We're real good at identifying the individual mistake and, "Oh, we had a procedure that covered how to do that. He messed up, he didn't follow it, so obviously procedures not used is the root cause." So when you're utilizing these cause and effect type tools, you fall into 2 traps, actually. You've got the inexperienced investigator trap, which I just talked about, where people don't know the questions to ask. They don't know how to go dig deep enough into a problem. And then you also have the experienced investigator trap, where people, they don't necessarily have a lot of expertise or been in a certain area of operation before, so they rely on what they do know. For example, if they're a training expert, they have that favorite causitis. I'm always going to say it's a training problem because they don't know where to go and ask more questions and dig deeper into the problem. So the 4 most abused root causes that we talked about, 3 of these, procedures not used or followed, training and SPAC not used. These are usually abused or picked, if you will, when we're falling into that inexperienced investigator trap. These are when we stay on a surface level type investigation. The investigators only identify what that individual mistake was. What was that thing that the human being did not follow? So in procedures, they're not asking questions about, okay, we had a procedure in place. Why did we still have this problem if the worker was following the procedure? Same thing for training. Well, this person, they were trained, they should have known better, so let's just send them back to training. So when you are dealing with investigations that involve procedures or training, you need to be asking questions about the procedure or the training itself. Okay, we had some kind of problem. The workers were using the procedure, but they deviated from it for some reason. Well, we need to understand what allowed them to make that mistake. We need to ask questions about, were there problems with the procedure itself? Was it sequenced wrong? Were there typos? Were there errors? Were we still following the procedure and still had a problem because maybe the procedure was written in a different language than what they're used to? Or it missed steps or didn't identify certain steps that it should have identified. Did we have the procedure available for the workers to use? Did they have a copy of it? Or is the copy kept in a file cabinet somewhere in the administration building so they didn't even have a procedure to follow? SPAC not used. That root cause gets abused when you have a company standard, you have a company policy or administrative control, you have something in place for how you expect this work to be done, and the worker doesn't follow that and we still have a problem. Well, again, in those cause and effect type investigations where we're approaching these from a blame-oriented standpoint, we identify the worker didn't follow the policy, but what we don't identify is, have we communicated the policy effectively? How are we at the policy itself? Is it meeting the requirements that we need it to meet? Is it conforming to the certain regulations or standards that we have to answer to? How are we at going out there and enforcing the policy from a frontline level? Are our frontline supervisors working with this standard and ensuring that it's being followed? And how are we going out and auditing and making sure that this standard we've put in place is being followed? And what do we do with our findings from those audits? Those are the types of questions we need to be asking, not focusing just on that individual mistake or approaching it from that blame-oriented standard that the worker did not follow or did not use the standard. Now, our fourth most abused root cause that we mentioned, no supervision. This relates exactly to the experienced investigator trap. They have a favorite cause. This is the hindsight is always 20/20 type of root cause that you might be presented to. No supervision. The supervisor was not there watching them do this task. The supervisor should have been right there. If the supervisor had been there, we wouldn't have had this problem. Well, again, what you're falling into is that this is something that people are relying on. It's quick and easy, and it's still approaching from that blame-oriented type investigation. Hindsight's 20/20. Sure, supervisors can catch every problem if they know about it before it happens, right? When we're abusing this root cause, what we're not doing is asking, first off, was this task so significant that we as an organization would require that immediate direct supervision? For example, you're not going to have a supervisor watch me tie my shoes. That is a task that I am totally capable of being self-monitoring of, supervising myself, if you will, to tie my shoes. So when people abuse this root cause, they start looking at these different types of tasks that are involved. And even if this is a low-level task, which normally they say this is not a critical step, we don't require immediate supervision here, but they still default to no supervision, expecting the supervisors to be a superman, if you will, that if they're there, or superwoman, if they're there and they're there on site and they're looking over the shoulder of this worker at this time, they're going to catch every problem. But you're really abusing that root cause and also your supervisors, because when you're looking at investigations and incidents and you have issues or think you may have problems with levels of supervision, you first have to ask yourself, was this a type of task? Was it so critical that it did require that immediate supervision? Was this the first time that the worker was doing this type of job? Or was it something new, something out of the ordinary that we don't usually do? So too often times people get this favorite causitis of just blaming because the supervisor wasn't there, when they really need to be looking at, okay, was this a task that required that immediate supervision? Did our supervisors know about it? Had we worked with them on this types of situations so they were prepared to give that level of supervision when needed? So this is the box for a lot of people. And these 4 abused root causes: procedures not used, not followed; training; standards, policies, or administrative controls not used; and no supervision. This is the box. And it's easy for people to rely on that box, and it's hard for them to get outside of the box. But when you're only identifying from this blame-oriented type approach of investigations, or staying on a surface level type investigation, what you're going to lead to is weak corrective actions, because we're abusing these root causes. Think about this again. The corrective actions that you've seen proposed to you. What are the 3 most common corrective actions or types of corrective actions that you see proposed? They're discipline of some sort. We counseled the operator to be more careful. Training is often proposed as a corrective action. We trained them before, it didn't work. Let's retrain them on the same task. Or procedures. We're going to write a new procedure, make the existing procedure longer, make it more detailed, whatever the case may be. These are the standard corrective actions that people use when they're stuck in these cause and effect type investigations, when they're falling into these investigator traps of not having any knowledge or knowing what to do. And we all know these are weak corrective actions. If we do have a problem, we're wanting to get up into that safeguard hierarchy. What's the strongest things we can do to correct these issues? Can we remove or reduce the hazard? If we can't do that, can we guard or remove the target? You're never going to get to those levels of corrective actions when you're staying in these cause and effect, blame-oriented type investigations. So to combat that, what you need to do is use TapRooT. TapRooT, in that system, there's 3 phases of the TapRooT investigation. First, understanding what happened in its entirety and taking a systematic approach to why it happened and what we're doing to correct it. You need to focus on the system, okay? What are the gaps in our process? What are the missing fail-safes in our system that allow these workers or these individuals to make these mistakes? You need to be investigating and approaching from a standpoint to determine what system failures occurred. What do we have as an organization, what do we have control of that we can address? Identifying that just the worker didn't follow procedure is not going to prevent the issue from happening again. And if you're fine with just being able to put a pin in this investigation and say, yep, we're done, we found the problem, the worker didn't follow the procedure, let's fire this guy and hire a new one, you're going to constantly have these problems. You need to be looking at investigations and approaching them from stressing facts, not opinions or assumptions, and remove the investigator bias. Well, the only way you're going to do that is if you have a systematic process that focuses on subjectivity and not objectivity. What TapRoot's known for is giving you those human performance questions to ask, so you don't get stuck in those surface level, those 2 cause and effect traps of being in a surface level investigation or having that favorite causitis because your investigators don't know what questions to ask or how to dig deeper into a problem. Those are the 4 most abused root causes: procedures, standards or policies not used, training, and no supervision. And the reason that you have those 4 most abused root causes is because people approach and rely on these cause and effect type tools to do investigations, or approach the investigation from a blame-oriented type approach. And to combat that, you need to get out of focusing on what was the individual mistake that was made, but focusing on what in our system, what safeguards do we have in place, what allowed those to fail or be missing to allow this certain hazard to come in contact with the target, to allow this incident to happen. So to learn more, to get yourself out of that blame-oriented type investigation and get yourself to a point where you have a culture where people are working together to solve the problems, and every mistake is an opportunity to improve, what you need to do is reach out to us here at TapRooT System Improvements, taproot.com, or connect with me on LinkedIn to learn more about how you can immediately stop abusing root causes from not doing a thorough investigation and start seeing results from your incident analysis. Thank you very much for your time. I hope you enjoyed this session, and I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I look forward to hearing from you soon.